Hey everybody, it's Kat, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Backstory Sessions. I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Kat. Hey, everyone. How are you?
Well, happy spring. It is finally sprung.
Yes, last Thursday was the first day, I believe, was it not?
I think so, and I was waiting, since January.
Yes,
I've
we
been
all were.
waiting for
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah, it's, well, I mean, it's still pretty chilly here. I can't say too chilly. It gets cold at night, I guess. And I did get an oil delivery the other day, so, it hasn't quite become spring yet.
Well, I feel like that is telling you it's almost like Groundhog's Day. That's telling you that you're going to need heat for, X number of weeks.
Yeah, it's another 4 weeks of winter or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a sign.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, it's probably not as true as the groundhog, but it's probably close.
Yeah. Maybe you're starting a new tradition thing, If you get an oil delivery between the 15th and the 30th of March, there's four more weeks of winter.
I mean, I'm just curious. It seems Pennsylvania is always wanting to predict the weather in some way. What's
Yes,
up with
yes, we
that?
are, It's what we do.
It's what you do.
Yep.
I, I think they should make a new motto or something for the state.
Yeah.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
Weather.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, in a way, that would be a pretty good motto.
Weather,
Say
it's what we
weather, like
do.
weather the storm, or
Yeah.
it means you're unstoppable.
Right. Yeah.
Well, hear that, Pennsylvania? I've just written you a new license plate motto.
There you go. We'll take it up with the governor.
So what is it now? Like brother? No, it's not brotherly.
No, it's Philadelphia.
Yeah. So what's your motto?
I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, anyways. So this is a better one probably than whatever it really is. But it's
Sure,
not.
sure.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Generally you are the title master, and it just happened that I came up with the motto.
Yeah, well, I mean, since you're on a roll here, maybe you can explain what's going on with our Podbean podcast hosting site.
Well, so we've had an uptick of listens, and I attribute it to my charming personality.
Okay.
And also people are probably, after they heard, of the 23-cent guess
Yes.
that I did within 23 cents. I mean, that's going to bring people to the yard.
Sure, sure.
I didn't think it would be this many, but
Yeah, it's
maybe we named off some favorite episodes and people and where they're from. Probably their friends and whatever picked up on it. So I think we should take the alphabet and start calling out the A's this week.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty interesting. The numbers are really high for the last couple of days, and we haven't figured out what that's attributed to. I mean, if
but we're
somebody,
sure happy,
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's just, we can't figure it out. I mean, maybe somebody tweeted about us, or maybe we got promoted in the algorithm since we have 200 episodes now. I don't really know, but
Woo-hoo.
it's just the numbers are way up across the board, and it's kind of interesting to see.
Well, and we thank everyone who's played a part in that. And if you've been a faithful listener from the beginning or wherever you jumped in, we are happy to have you.
That's true. We do. We are thankful that everybody's listening, and not only in the U.S. but from around the world. We get a lot of people listening in from other countries.
Yeah, and I think this season or even, some of last, we've always had some guests, from other countries, but we've done quite a few
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the past couple of seasons.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it's always very interesting, and technology has really just made that all possible for us.
Yes, thank God for Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's we're not that old, and if you just like think back to like in high school even, or we would not have been able we would have been writing letters, like a pen pal or
Right, yeah, we didn't
a
even have the
rotary
internet then.
phone or something, but you wouldn't be able to, interview people across the world.
That's true. Yeah, we'd be sending smoke signals or something.
Well, those like the video cameras that they had. You remember those? Like,
Yeah, they were pretty big.
my aunt had one of those. You can imagine how long it would take. Like you would have to record your part and then mail it. And somebody could,
Yeah,
because they could record over the 8 track, not 8 track, a VHS, because all you had to do is put like tape over that tab
oh yeah, yeah, true.
if it was broken,
Yeah.
because you broke it if you had something on there you didn't want to record over,
Hmm.
or else it just broke.
Well, speaking of recording, well, not recording, but other things going on, you have a birthday party next week for uh, someone.
Yeah, Mystery Meats has gotten an invitation to come and do a show, a customized birthday party show. And we are really excited about that. We've adapted a very fun script, and we got a lot of fun facts in there. And I think it's going to be a blast.
So this is your first time doing that, right?
So it's our first time doing a whole show.
Hmm.
We have had birthdays, people bringing someone for their birthday to a show.
Hmm.
And if they tell us ahead of time, we have like written a small, little part into the show just to acknowledge the birthday in some kind of way
Right.
that went along with the plot. But we've incorporated this, into the whole show. So, like, almost every place there's like friends that are coming to the party,
Right.
friends of the birthday person, you know, they have furnished the list to us and
Oh, so
the
you've
facts about them.
incorporated different things about different people into.
Yes,
Ah,
into the plot. And also, they'll be up on as part of the cast, like up there acting, probably.
interesting.
I
Well,
know. It's
uh,
exciting.
yeah, maybe it'll be a new sideline for Mystery Meats.
Well, I hope so because I love like customizing things. I mean, all of our scripts are written in-house, and
Yeah.
this just gives it another level of creativity to think about, oh, how could we make, this person fit into what we have?
All
It's
right.
like a puzzle. And I love that about writing is that you you can make the puzzle work like a lot of different ways, but there's just one way that it comes together that you feel like is the best, and that's kind of where you leave it.
Unless you lose some of the pieces.
Or didn't have them all to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
I might be like, let's say you have a screw loose. I may be a few puzzle pieces short.
Yes, a few fries short of a Happy Meal.
Yes, yes, something like that. But, I mean, I will say that many artistic people are, and it doesn't seem to matter. So,
That's true.
yeah. So, I mean, and I consider you, although I did vouch for your, what would you say, your capabilities in your cognitive.
Oh, yes, yes, that's right.
Yes, I did vouch for those last week, but
Yes, thank
you
you.
know,
Yeah, maybe that was what
and
drew all the people in.
I'm going to say you are creative too, so you might have a few pieces missing of your own.
Oh, I know I do. There's no might about it.
But look, I mean, we have both created like really interesting work,
That's true.
whether
Yeah,
whether because of it or in spite of it, who knows? Who
that is
even
true.
cares? So, in creating, we have a guest today, and she is a creative, you know. So we would have to ask her. I can't speak about if she has any, pieces missing, but she is very creative, and she has used the creativity to also create a career. And, you hear starving artists, but, there's a business side to the arts.
Oh yeah, for sure. Marketing comes to mind and promotion and all of that.
Yeah.
That's all part of it. Not necessarily the fun part, but there is it.
Yeah. So she's been able to, and she's going to tell us about, what it is that she has been able to do in the music industry and talk to us about her new book. And this is, fascinating because I do have a play that is closely related in title. So
That's
we have a
right.
connection already, really.
That's right. You do. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that.
I wonder
She
if
seems like
she
a,
will. I wonder if she will read that play.
well, I probably will not mention it to her, but you
Why sad cat?
well, I mean, it's like she's the guest, and I'm not trying to promote my work through
Yes.
her, but I'm just, it's not every day that you see Gorilla Girl or some form of it in a title. And so when I saw her, title of her book, which we're going to be talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, a kindred spirit, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your play is. I don't want to say it's. I don't know how to describe it. It's a little on the dark side, I would say.
Well, I mean, I would say it it has a dark side to it, but everybody goes through periods of darkness,
Mm-hmm.
and it it also has a lot of other kinds of moments of happiness and you
Oh
know
yeah, for sure. It's not all darkness, but I mean, it just on a. I guess the theme is a little dark, but
on the spectrum of
on the
darkness.
spectrum of darkness, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can expect no less from me. My joy puzzle pieces are missing.
That could be, yeah.
Oh well, it's one of my favorite plays that I've written. What I really like about it is there's only three characters and it's a full length play. So I love like being able to use one setting and three characters and hold an audience attention for 2 hours.
Oh yeah, I mean, it certainly does that. It was, I remember I read it and, well, actually, didn't we do a read through of it or something?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I remember,
arguments broke out.
yes, yes, I remember that. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, because people are so like, that's why I guess what I didn't expect that people would be so protective of their, which side they're on in this triangle.
Yeah,
And
correct me if I'm wrong, did we do a podcast about that?
I don't remember if I think we might have interviewed some of the actors about it.
Yeah, I think we did. That was a long time ago. It's like back in season 2 or 3 or something. And
Yeah.
I remember we had actors on who were doing a play of yours, and I assume that's what it was. But
Well, at that point, it was college. It was being some college readers,
yeah,
and the first read through at the end of it, and the dark part, as you call it, like the girls started screaming and crying, and
yeah, yeah.
I'm
That's
like,
right.
and it's not part of his script. I mean, like the play was over, and she was like, I can't deal with this. I can't. And I'm
Yeah,
thinking like, what?
yeah.
So,
It definitely evoked a strong reaction for sure.
and that was the first time that I, knew because to me, it obviously I didn't go screaming and crying or any of that.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that was like the first time you'd heard it read, though, right?
Yes, and so, I was really surprised how what I felt like, that college students had weakened in their ability to like deal with the world.
Well, I mean, it certainly drew a lot of strong emotions from people.
Yes. Yes, it did. And so the second time then we had the reading was with adults, beyond college age
Right.
adults.
Yeah.
And they were, the audience was mixed in age too. But I mean, over Zoom, usually people after 2 hours of Zoom, they're like, zoned out.
Right. Yeah. Gotta go. Great
But
play. Gotta
people
go.
were like, I mean, you were there for the discussion. I mean, people were, really like passionately pleading for
Yeah.
their point of view.
Yeah. That's true. I remember that.
And that was a highlight in my writing career because, I love when something that I write is able to evoke such strong, like, love or hate for characters.
Yeah. I guess that's the hallmark of a well-written character.
Aw, that's probably the nicest thing you said to me, like,
I wouldn't
this
say
podcast at least.
this podcast, maybe. Hmm.
Well, I did vouch for your cognitive skills,
That's
so,
true. Yeah. Well.
yeah. But I can't wait to hear about what inspired her book. Because, we always like when we interview writers, we just want to know, like, what made you want to write this? Like,
Yeah, I think it's more autobiographical than, I mean, it's definitely nonfiction. I don't believe it is fiction.
well, and I know that you're going to ask, like, what is the line if you have one where you don't cross?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's always an interest to me because I always struggle with that. It's like, how much do
Yeah.
you want to tell?
And seeing Gorilla Girl, I didn't have that problem because it was fiction. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But I could definitely, if I was writing a story of my life with true, situations and all that, I could see where, like, there's probably so much of it I would not want to write about.
Yeah, because I mean, some of it's embarrassing and, whatever. You don't want to, I guess you don't want to alienate your friends and things like that.
Well, and two, like, even though it's your story, it's, when you bring like other people into it, it's their story too.
Yeah.
So you're like, kind of like making them exposed when maybe they don't want to be.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's when you have to ask their permission or whatever. We've never really run into that where we've had to go and ask people like, hey, is it okay if I mean, maybe I did on a couple things, but it was just like, hey, I'm writing a story and I mentioned you in it. Do you mind? Do you mind? And they're like, oh, no, that's cool.
Well, I think if like Mommy Dearest and things like that, like a lot of stories, memoirs are written, about, at least from the writer's point of view, traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
And so, the other person can write their own memoir and tell their point of view, so who's to say? But I know that you just generally have an interest in that part of it. And
Yeah.
so I figure that that'll be a question that you ask.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's on the list. So why don't we talk to Jenny and find out what her book's about and the rest of her story.
Yes, I can't wait to hear it. And, for everyone out there that's interested in writing your story, or even, just has a dream of the business side of the industry of music or, the arts, like, just going to be a great interview for that.
I agree. All right, let's talk to Jenny.
Jenny, I want to welcome you to Backstory Sessions. We are really excited to have you as our guest today.
Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there's so much to talk about. Of course, your memoir coming out, and we definitely want to dig into that. It has such a interesting title, and there's so many fascinating things about you. But since we are backstory sessions, I'd like to just, delve into the backstory a little bit. Like, were you, as a child, let's say, were you like driven? Have you always like been that person that just knew where they were going and how to get there?
No, it's a really interesting question. No. I mean, to be blunt, no. I was extremely focused on soccer and very athletic. And, I definitely had a little bit of a revolution in my early childhood because of MTV. And that kind of changed everything for me because I became able to really dive into the visuals of the artists of the songs that I loved. And then I became equally as passionate about music as I did about, other kid things in my life. But it wasn't until I was in high school, which by then was the 90s, that I became interested in understanding how people work in the music business. And so I really just started to learn.
So you mentioned MTV. That's quite interesting to me. What, if you remember, was the video that, sort of captured your attention first?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I don't recall, but I do recall knowing that as soon as I got home from school, I was going to watch that. And it just became something that was always on in the background too. And not only MTV, but then we got really lucky, if you guys remember, because VH1 came and so did BET. And so as a kid who would flip the radio channels and annoy everyone in my family because I couldn't listen to a whole song. I wanted to listen to rock, and then I wanted to listen to pop, and I wanted to listen to classic rock or whatever. I took that irritating behavior and applied it to the TV. And so I would just become immersed in flipping the channels on the TV. But I still had to get up and do it because we didn't have like a fancy TV,
Oh no.
Yeah. So, but I watched everything, and I think that was the difference, is that it wasn't just one video or one artist. It was like, wait a second. I want to see all the videos from all the artists from all the formats.
So what were you thinking, or was there anything consciously as you're absorbing like all of this? Because it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? Like it seems so radical and there wasn't the internet, so it was like the idea that I wanted to work in the music business. When you would tell people that, they would like pat you on the head, and tell you that like, that's a really good dream, kid. What are you going to do though in real life, And I got really serious about it. And when I started, having to decide what I was going to do for college, I remember having conversations with one particular guidance counselor who, after I said, I learned a little bit about the music business that you pick up on a lot of things through articles. I just remember like delving into those very deep stories that Rolling Stone would put out, and artists would reference their record label or their lawyers or their business managers or whatever they were saying, and most of those things were referenced in maybe not the best light possible. But for me, I just kind of clung on to, the record label is, sort of the holy grail, like that's what I want to do. And when I remember asking my guidance counselor, and he's suggesting to me that I should go to cosmetology school because that and I was like, okay, I'm not sure we're on the same wavelength here, sir. But I mean, love cosmetology school, but that's not what I was saying. So it was frustrating to me at the time that nobody kind of pulled me aside and said, hey, I think what you're talking about is maybe marketing. And I think what you're talking about is maybe an internship program. And I think maybe what you're talking about is live music production or, something like that. It was just it was a brick wall in every single conversation that I had. And at the time, there was maybe there were music business schools, but I wasn't aware of them.
And I'm thinking you're probably not going to have very many like mentor, role model people, in public education. Like even the music teachers probably are, skilled at teaching music, but just more towards that part, the teaching of the music, and not, beyond that, I would think.
No, you're exactly right. And even the music teachers were focused on, some of them, really lucky to have some amazing music and art teachers, people that actually participated in local things like songwriting events at coffee houses, or, they still played in cover bands, or, now looking back, of course, like a couple of these music teachers were only in their 20s, right? And they seemed like, when you're in high school, anything, now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, but yeah, it wasn't the art. Like, I think people understand the art, they still try to talk you out of it because it is a risky business, but it's also something that people can understand because they can buy it, they can listen to it, they can watch it, like all of those things. When you start talking about the business part of it, it seems like that's just nobody knows anyone who knows anyone, like at the
Right.
time. Like it just was not it was just like, again, it was kind of like, sure, kid,
Yeah.
have a backup plan.
So did you have a backup plan?
Hell no, I didn't have a backup plan.
I asked that question because many of the people we interview always say, don't have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Stick with plan A and make it happen, whatever it takes.
My backup plan was, so I went to a regular university. I dropped out of said university because, of course, I did not enjoy my time. Nothing wrong with the university. Then I found out that there was a recording conservatory that provided opportunities for internships. And so I was like, that's it. Like, that's what I'm going to do. So from that point forward, no, I had no backup plan. And my parents were basically, the deal was, if you go to college, then we'll help you. If you don't go to college, you're on your own. And they stuck by that. And so that forced me in the best way to not have a backup plan and to figure out, how do I get from internship to paid position? And I did do that. And it was really hard work, but it was also a lot of luck and people looking out for me. And it wasn't enough money to survive on, but it was enough money at that point. It was a job at a record label. And so what I always tell people is, my first job in the business, I felt like I had already made it. So everything else that happened post 1999 for me has been cherries.
Very interesting. So what did you do at that, when you think you've made it? What was that job? What were you doing?
I mean, I was the receptionist at Electra Entertainment in Los Angeles, and it was a super duper creative time during music. And it was that, precipice of on demand, right before the internet really took off for everybody mainstream. And so I was really positioned, not only by my age, but positioned by my passion to be boots on the ground, to be a young voice in the room. And I was lucky enough to work with people who wanted to listen to that voice.
So I imagine in this job that you did start to make connections that would be helpful to you, or
Well, I mean, it became my entire life. Like everybody that I knew, I mean, I moved to Los Angeles on my own. I didn't know anybody. And so everyone that I met was connected one way or another through our work. And so it was my social life, it was my professional life, it was, my friends, the people that I still talk to today that I would consider my best friends. I think people might have similar experiences through their collegiate time. And, maybe even before that, people that grew up in a town where they've known, everybody for a ton of years. And so there's that camaraderie. But my childhood was pretty unstable in terms of like my location, and when that happens, you kind of lose that linear experience and friendship. And because I skipped over the college part, like this experience, this professional experience was very formative for me.
so I guess where you said you moved to Los Angeles. So where were you prior to that? Or you
I was
say,
in a I was in a bunch of different places, but I graduated high school in Phoenix, Arizona.
okay. So you still had quite a move there.
Yeah. A nice drive through the desert with my parents' gas credit card until they caught on. I had that gas credit card.
Wow.
Yep.
Were you scared at all, or you were more excited?
Oh, scared isn't even the word. I mean, drove I don't even I can't even begin. I mean, Phoenix is a pretty big city, but nothing compared to Los Angeles. And I remember the first drive, you drive through the desert, through like Palm Springs, and then eventually you start getting closer to Los Angeles, and the freeway just gets wider and wider and wider with more and more and more and more people. And I just had never seen a freeway that wide before. And just, I mean, the drive alone was, was questioning everything just by like the mass change of what I was experiencing. I mean, I just didn't know how huge that city was.
So in a way, I guess it sounds from hearing you talk about it like, that's pretty symbolic too of seeing like, more lanes, more people, like bigger, more than you've ever seen before.
Yeah, and it's like I don't think it's normal, for a lot of people like at 18 to tell your parents like, "Hey, I'm dropping out of college and I'm moving to Hollywood." If I'm a mother now, and so like if I heard my child say that, I would be like, "I'm sorry, what? What are we doing?" Um, I was telling
Hell
this
you
story,
are.
right? I was telling this story talking about music videos. If y'all remember the Guns N' Roses video for Welcome to the Jungle,
Yeah.
there okay. So, there's that beginning scene, where Axel steps off the bus from Indiana and just looks around and is like, "What? Whoa." It wasn't that dramatic because I had a long drive and the traffic was very crowded. So I spent, more time trying to determine, hey, what exit should I get off on to, use the restroom or to get something to eat or whatever. And, I only had enough money to get me by for like a couple of months. And so I was really frugal and I just was in shock. Like the first time I saw Sunset Boulevard, I was like, what is this? Like this is, I had seen the pictures 1,000 times. I had seen it on TV. I had read about it. I thought I was absolutely prepared. I was like, I got this. I'm cool. I can take it. Got out of my car and was like, no, I'm not okay. Like this is way bigger than I thought, way louder than I thought, way dirtier than I thought. And it's, I just had to put my game face on and pretend like it didn't phase me, but it phased me very much.
All right, Matt, this is quite the adventure. So,
Yeah, so I was reading in some of the on your website about the book, and
Hmm.
it says that your first job interview is set up by a stripper.
True. True story.
How did that come about?
That conservatory that I was telling you about offered internship programs, but their expertise was really like the production side of things, so recording studios, live event production, etc. So I was kind of striking out on making record label contacts.
Hmm.
And but in my community in Phoenix, I was immersed in the local music scene there. And a friend of mine introduced me to somebody who says, "Hey, I know this girl and she knows everybody in LA." And I was like, "Okay, okay, like whatever." And then I got on the phone with Nikki and she made the connection. And she was all business and she made the connection and gave me very strong advice on how to conduct myself. And, quite frankly, she gave me the biggest gem of them all, which was once you get your foot in the door, make sure you turn around and you help somebody behind you. And
Mm.
I always think about her and I always think about how serious she was as a business person and how she was making a recommendation on her reputation for me, a stranger.
Yeah.
And I really I give her a lot of credit.
So you worked at a bunch of different, saying Disney, Yahoo Music, and then You ended up in Nashville. I'm like, how do you go from LA to Nashville?
I mean, it sounds like a big transition, but it's not because the music world is so interconnected. But that was basically a 12-year journey.
Hmm.
And I got a call of a really amazing opportunity to work for a man by the name of Bill Bennett, who at the time was running Warner Brothers in Nashville. And he moved a couple years before I did. And so, once again, the connectivity of the community and really being immersed with all these creative people, like you just, you kind of stick together. So I had been a fan of country music, and I had been responsible for some of the programming of the country music when I was at Yahoo Music. And so by proxy, like had talked to my counterparts of people that worked at labels in Nashville, and I'd come to Nashville for a big radio seminar that we have here called Country Radio Seminar, which is like an industry facing forward convention. And I just fell in love with Nashville like everybody else does. And I fell in love with the artist community, the songwriting community, and I when the opportunity came, loved Los Angeles, but 12 years is a long time, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's
I
like
was
50,
yeah,
50
I was
years.
right. I was ready to make a change.
And then you had some career uncertainty, it says. I mean, have you struggled at times with your career path, or did you
Oh,
always?
every day, for sure. I mean, well, I think that when you I mean, I I think what makes me an entrepreneur, what makes me good at being an entrepreneur is maybe what gives me the most challenge about working for other people,
Hmm.
you know? And when you don't know you're an entrepreneur and you get amazing opportunities to work for really smart people, prolifically successful companies, and you're still not happy, you sort of look at yourself like, am I the problem? You know, because I kept getting hired to do certain things that some people would say, you know, more of a disrupting role, more of somebody that's charged with thinking outside of the box. I hate to use that phrase, but that's the best one to use.
Yeah.
And then, kind of like maybe starting to do the same thing every day. And like I said, when you don't know that you're an entrepreneur and you don't know that you want to be your own boss, or you're scared or whatever, you keep hitting these walls and it looks like they're mistakes, but they're not. They were really important lessons for me to
Yeah.
be able to do what I do now.
Hmm. Interesting. Uh, okay, Kat, what else you got? I'll jump back in here in a second.
Well, being an entrepreneur, that is sounds like a scary word, but it sounds also like a perfect path for you based on the way that you've told the backstory. Like it does seem like you've had incredible drive and direction of what you wanted. So you decide to write this memoir, and had you written anything before? Had you been keeping, like chapters or notes along the way, or what made you decide to write it down?
I I always thought I would be a writer too. It's an but I thought I was going to be a fiction writer like all of us. No matter what dream you have, you always have another one. And I made a really big play at doing that about 15 years ago, and it was like a failed effort on my behalf. And so I I I laugh to say, I started out wanting to be this like prolific, deep, deep fiction, dark kind of writer. I wanted to be like a brooding writer. And then here I am writing a memoir about all the embarrassing things that I've ever done. And, trying to instead just inspire people to be good and remind them that we are connected. And that was really the driving force. Was I had all these blessings. I had all of these major wins in the mentor categories. I had just an incredible community of people that I got to learn from, that all, really helped guide me to the realization that I needed to do what I'm doing now. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I, like a lot of people who experience something like that, or any life-changing, moment, you you take stock in what's important. And I had realized that I had some lessons from previous people that lost their battles with cancer, that I had all these lessons that I felt like I needed to pass on. And then, just like you and Matt, I went through COVID and, struggled like everybody else on the planet Earth to make sense of everything that was happening, not only professionally, but personally, with children and health and all of those things. And I just started writing things down, and I used some of the time to connect with people that I hadn't connected with, to make sure I got those stories right. Because I did not set out to write a memoir. I actually set out to write a business book, but soon found out during the process of writing that book that I am my business. So there's no separation from who I am and what I do. So it ended up being, yeah, it's definitely a business book. And there are certainly like digital marketing, nuggets of information in there, but it's really a plea after watching how people treated each other online, and, you know, understanding the world that we had before the internet, wanting everyone to take a step back and realize what a gift it is to be able to connect with people and find community. And, for me, finding community within the music community, but also the cancer survivor community, and also the entrepreneur community, that all comes from the digital side of the world. And so there's so much good. And so the idea was to just remind people in conversation all the time, and have the book reflect those conversations that I was having in person, which was, hey, we are the same online and offline. We are all connected, and we just need to be good. We need to do better. We need to treat each other better, no matter what's happening politically, what's happening, the news cycle. All of those things are front and center in what the feedback loop that we hear about digital marketing and social networking. But at the heart of it, it's a means for us to connect as human beings in real life. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but it became a driving force to make sure that I got that message across.
Well, when I saw the title of your memoir, we made a connection. So, and I'm going to tell you now of the connection about it. So, becoming Girlilla, I have written a play called Gorilla Girl. And so I wondered, in developing my character, how does one become Gorilla Girl? And you say in the title, becoming, so you don't feel that you were always?
I totally agree with what you just said. And it was that realization that who I am and what I do are not separate. And I really, even, I had a business partnership that I almost lost my company through. And it was through that process of knowing that, just from a pure legality standpoint, that the asset of my company could be dissolved. and that I would lose that name became so painful for me, like losing a part of my identity. And luckily, it all worked out. It wasn't easy, but it worked out. And I getting that name back for me was like I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, I didn't even change my name when I got married, right? Like I never took another name. And so giving Girlilla away just felt like I was letting myself go. And so I think when I say becoming Girlilla, what I'm really saying is I'm becoming myself.
Very interesting. And also it's a very catchy title. I feel like
Thank you. Well, I want to read your play.
well, I'd love for you to actually.
I will. Send it to me, please.
So another thing that really was interesting to me was your estranged father and this relationship and role that you attribute to him. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because that seems like a very personal thing, but you were willing to share that. So,
Yeah, I mean, it is personal. And also, I was willing to share it because I feel like it's just something we all go through. And while, like a lot of kids my age, I was a latchkey kid and my parents divorced each other. And my parents actually divorced each other a couple times, which is a whole podcast in itself. But I had complicated feelings, and he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and so it was a pretty painful, exit. But once again, I was given this amazing gift to be able to talk to him, and he, in passing, while he was in the hospital one day, and he was kinda in and out of consciousness, as, I'm sure you guys have, I hope you haven't gone through it, but if you have, then I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mhm. But he kinda asked me, I mean, he didn't kind of, he asked me what I would do if I knew my life was half over. And I remember just being like, I kind of recoiled, when he talked to me because I was like, ew, like, let's not, that's a really deep question, like, let's stick to the topics that we know we can, get through together. We'll talk about the weather. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos, all of those things. But it was such a profound moment that I knew that there was some divine intervention in that moment, because not only was the question so vast, but it was so simple, and it was easy for me to answer it. And I told him what I would do in like very simple terms. And there was something about saying that out loud to my dad, who, by the way, didn't really stick around to listen. I mean, I think he kind of went back to sleep, and I went back to my laptop, and we just lived to fight another day. But him asking me that question in passing and me answering it very simply gave me the blueprint to what I would end up doing immediately after his death.
wow, that is quite profound. And I'm sure that, just you telling this story for the listeners that will all be thinking like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I mean, you can't hear that story without asking yourself the question.
Yep.
All right.
And how great is it to sort of just continue to ask yourself that question? I mean, as we are lucky to have more years on the earth, none ever guaranteed. But at the time I was so young, I was 30 prior to being 30. And when I think about that, you know, I just think, wow, what a reset.
Right. Well, Matt, some things I think you can relate to there.
Yeah, I went through sort of the same thing with my mother, and yeah, she asked me once if she was dying, and I took the easy way out and said, "No, you're going to be fine," you know. And but I kind of regret that now. But I had a question about, so two questions actually. The first one is, do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to identify so much with what you do? You say what you do is who you are, and
Yeah.
everybody says you shouldn't, a job is just a job, that kind of thing. So, what do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I do want to say I hope you don't regret giving your mom some comfort because you should never regret that, you know?
I think I just regret what I said. I think it was more for me than it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do, right? As
Yeah.
kids, like, yeah, but I think that's so normal. Anyways, off topic, but oh, I mean, it's absolutely not for everyone to be so synonymously connected to what you are professionally to who you are personally. And I often say in this building that you have to be a little crazy to want to do this. And that if this doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean that you are the problem, you know? But it has been such a beautiful, full, rich life so far that, again, there is absolutely nothing wrong with just having a job and then putting your job aside and then, having your life. But for me, that just never felt right. It felt like I was putting on a mask. I was putting on a uniform, taking it off. Like, you know, this is this is who I am. I mean, it's who I am since I can remember. So I do require time off and I do require being disconnected so that I can be connected, but I've gotten better at having some boundaries, and I try to encourage realistic boundaries within the building, but I still get a literal kick out of what I do. So there's no bummer for me about going to work, In fact, it's like I have, an amazing home life as well, but, like, when Monday comes around, I'm usually pretty happy about going in.
Yay, I have to go to work.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, they say you have to love what you do, and, it sounds like you do.
I
So,
mean, Matt, when I told you that, like, my dream had already come true when I was
mhm.
19 years old, so the fact that I didn't have to move home. I mean, I was broke, and I'm not saying that I didn't borrow money because I certainly did, but I never had to quit. I wanted to. I wanted to many, many, many times, but I didn't.
So that kind of leads me to my next question is, I know you've seen a lot of people, you followed a lot of people and helped a lot of people and stuff. What do you think is the one thing, if you could put your finger on it, that holds people back from being successful or doing, what they're intended to do, I guess I would say.
I think that I really believe that people don't wanna let other people down,
Hmm.
and sometimes there's legacy, within a family or expectation of, and it's also, like, defining what success is for you, Like, for me, success wasn't necessarily something that needed to come in the form of money.
Hmm.
Um, I did have to make money because that was an expensive city, but, like, to me, it was being able and being privileged enough to be able to ignore, whatever fake rules people had tried to put on me my whole life.
Right.
So I think everybody comes to the conclusion about what they're passionate about, and that doesn't necessarily have to be your job, but the important thing is to be successful is if you're have a passion about something that isn't necessarily going to be your job, then your job needs to be conducive to you continuing doing that passion, right? Like happy is successful. And too many times we've just been told over and over and over again, if you do this and you make this, then this will be, happy. Well, I know a lot of rich, quote unquote, successful people who are miserable.
Mm-hmm.
And then conversely, I know a lot of majorly happy people that are supremely talented that the world will never hear from,
Yeah.
And I want to be in the middle of that. I want to be somewhere in that sweet spot.
All right, Jenny, I know you got to go soon here, so I'm going to let Kat ask one more question.
Okay.
Well, so there's a lot of comments here of what people have said after reading your memoir. And so I'm looking at the one that says that so reading this book for the listeners, will make you cry, make you laugh. It's light and it's going to light a fire under you, encourage you to listen to your quiet inner voice that we all have. So that's a lot of things, that really speaks to just about everybody. So do you feel like that you accomplished all of that?
I hope so, Kat. I hope that my hope is that when somebody reads the book, they laugh along with the funny parts and probably laugh at me at some of the parts that were funny for other people, but probably not for me at the time. But I hope I tried to envision somebody reading it and nodding along like, "Oh my God, yes," like, "I understand how she feels," or, "Yes, I have also been there," and to relate to me. And I really hope that everybody who takes the time to connect with the book sees themselves in my story.
Well, I can't wait to, for the listeners to be able to get the book and hear what the feedback is. But I'm sure it's going to be incredible just based on hearing your story and, reading what others who have read it already have said. So, and it's a great title. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Matt. You guys are so precious to take your time out of your life to talk to me. I really, really appreciate it so much.
Just real quick, when is the book coming out?
April 15th.
Okay, great. Okay, on that note, we're going to let you go because I know you got other things you want to do, and we thank you for your time. And hopefully you'll come back and talk to us again.
My pleasure anytime. And Kat, for real, I would love to read your play.
all right, deal.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Johnny.